In the headlines, $82 million from the World Bank for development of Dominicas agriculture. Roseau Bayfront vendors look forward to off-season cruise calls to boost their earnings this year. And nurses end a week of protest action ahead of their union meeting next week. I'm Andrea Louis with the Channel 5 News, back with the details after this.
Imagine you have Hollywood at your command. Introducing Flow Evil. Anywhere you are.
Big girls don't scream hard like Halloween, make me feel alive.
There's a world of entertainment here, and you run the show. Flow Evil.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow.
Thank you for staying with us. First up, an $82 million EC World Bank funded project to enhance Dominica's agricultural sector expected to be completed within 4 years. Julian Morris has more.
That's according to coordinator of the Project Implementation Unit, PIU, of the World Bank project, Kevin Stevenson. Stevenson says the project was approved last July, and currently the unit is recruiting staff to carry out the functions under the project.
In other words, it's a 5-year project, but it needs to be implemented in 4 years. So we're going to have to get the ground running. So that's why we're in the process of employing staff. But just to give you a big background as to the project objectives and to follow up on some of the details of the minister's presentation, the project is basically into 3 main components. Component A, Component B, Component C. Component A deals with the restoration of the sector, Component B deals with restoration of infrastructure, and Component C deals with project management.
Stevenson says accurate data is key in carrying out this project. The previous World Bank funded project was faced with challenges due to lack of correct information.
Basically, we had challenges in terms of the criteria of participation. And as a result, you found that we had a lot of discrepancies between the classification of what is a small farmer, what is a medium farmer, and what is a large farmer. So presently what we are doing, before we even start launching that second program, because one of the fundamental differences of that second program, it is not a social recovery program. In other words, it is a program targeting the restoration of the sector. So that means targeting, ensuring that the people that receive are targeted and in the right places. So that's why the 3 categories of small, medium, and large is important.
Stevenson says discussions are ongoing with the Ministry of Agriculture officials to prepare for the importation of planting and other material for the farmers who will benefit under this program.
We're hoping that we can start the process by continuing the discussions with the Ministry of Agriculture in terms of getting the technical specifications, so we could start the request for quotes to get the seeds, the tools and equipments, and the inputs. On the inputs, we have $500,000 US, call it 1.3 EC dollars, for getting fertilizers. And we also have $2.5 million for, and these are figures that I'm calling that we expect to spend in the first 12 months, because we already submitted to the PS and to the Ministry of Finance what our projections are for the first 12 months.
Coordinator of the PIU hopes to have 8 staff members hired by April this year.
In other top stories, a representative of the Old Market Vendors Association is hoping that cruise calls in this year's off-season will materialize. Old Market vendors are still recovering from the loss suffered by Hurricane Maria and are grateful that cruise calls resumed in January 2018. Last year, Carnival Cruise Lines made several calls to Dominica during the off-season, which runs from April to September. Representative of the Old Market Vendors Association, Evadne Saintville, while commending the work of the Ministry of Tourism and Culture in getting vendors back on their feet, says another series of off-season calls by Carnival Cruise Lines would greatly assist the vendors.
Last off-season, we had a call every other week from Carnival. We have not heard anything yet, and we are hoping and praying that there is also a call this off-season. because the recovery road is very long for the vendors. We did not get the assistance expected, and because of that, some of us were forced to go to the bank to start our businesses over, especially those who lost 100% of their business. So we had to face the bank to take loans, and the cruise ship season was not what, as I said in the past, we anticipated. So we really hope and pray that we do get an off cruise ship call from Carnival.
Outside of the desire to have Carnival Cruise Lines make calls during the off-season, Centerville says the vendors are faced with other challenges.
The sales are slow. We have had quite a bit of calls. They are slow. They are smaller vessels compared to what we normally have. So the sales are slow because the vessels are much smaller vessels than we anticipated. The other challenge is the Tourist Information Office. In the past, the doors were open to the visitors, so they come from the cruise ship booth and walk through the Tourist Information Office into the courtyard of the old market. However, this season, they have installed air conditioning units in the Tourist Information Office, and that carries a barrier for the vendors in the courtyard. So the doors are locked, and many times the visitors are not sure what is happening at the back. Not only locked, but the glass is also tint.
One would also notice the presence of white tents on the bayfront used by vendors. Centerville commended this move by the Ministry of Tourism and Culture, but believes vendors should have more ownership of the tents.
I believe, and I've said it in the past, that the vendors should have been given part grant, part loan with conditions. Because I said that to see after the carnival, some of the vendors came back with their tents, which was the same old. And they did that because the tent owners took time in bringing the tents back on the bayfront, and the business days continued. Now, we cannot hold the vendors responsible for that because they have to earn. But if they were given part grant, part loan, they would have had the uniform tents. That would have been the criteria for the tourism, for the Ministry of Tourism, and there would have still been formality, uniformity on the bayfront.
To date, 35 people vend at the Roseau Old Market. In other top stories, Dominica has come a long way since Hurricane Maria's devastation of 226% of the country's gross domestic product. Prime Minister Scarrett told the United Nations this week the recovery being experienced in Dominica is largely due to the determination and resilience of the people at home and abroad.
As a leader, I was forced to face unprecedented and unimaginable devastation of the economy, the natural and built environments, and in the face of it all, to motivate a demoralized population. Today, I am happy to report that the Economic Commission of Latin America and the Caribbean, ECLAC, has predicted that the Dominican economy will grow by 9% this year. Our infrastructure is being built. New homes and schools have gone up, and a new modern hospital is under construction. The new structures are stronger and better than before in order to make them more hurricane resistant. Dominica has defied the odds, and we are on a clear growth trajectory. Our national recovery has been led by the resilient and resourceful people of Dominica at home and abroad, who were determined not to be defeated by the mighty forces of nature.
Mr. Scarrett has also acknowledged the assistance of Friends of Dominica in the international community who have played a big role in the post-Maria recovery process.
From the seeds of Maria's destruction grew my administration's policy initiatives and actions to build the first climate-resilient nation in the world and to usher Dominica into a bright future.
In other news, Fire Chief Josiah Dupie is hoping to see a successful reforestation program to help combat the incidents of bushfires. For this year thus far, the fire and ambulance services responded to 26 bushfires in February and over 27 bushfires in March. These incidents are being heavily attributed to the high levels of mulch or lemongrass, especially on the west coast. Fire Chief Josiah Dupe pointed out that the spread of lemongrass has been on the rise over the years.
There are aerial photographs of Dominica from the 70s, probably before that, but I can refer to those that I've seen from the 70s. And if you do a comparison with those pictures versus what we see today, you will see the dramatic change in the vegetation along the west coast of the island. What is that change? It's what we have known the west coast to have versus this type of grass. We call it mulch, lemongrass, which you see being introduced and expanding. This grass, what it does, it claims and expands its area. As a matter of fact, it is probably what is referred to by foresters as a fire-resistive type of vegetation.
Forestry Division officials say a reforestation program is ongoing and an agro-processing facility is on the cards to reduce the amount of lemongrass in the country. Dupe is optimistic that a successful reforestation program can happen in Dominica.
This has been done in certain areas, not in Dominica necessarily, but I know it is possible here. You would have to, of course, remove that grassland, the grass, the mulch. You would have to get in fresh soil and really diligently plant new vegetation in these areas. I know of some areas on the northeast coast where we have several acres of that type of vegetation. And again, you can see its impact, how it's expanding and moving from one mountain top or ridge top to the next, because again, the spores are dispersed by wind, and therefore, you have it occupying new areas.
Dupe says bushfires present a number of challenges to the already limited resources of the fire department.
One of our main challenges in responding to bushfires is access. Those fires are sometimes happening in places that are not easily accessible, and therefore we may not be able to get to those fires. That's one of the challenges. The other would be access to water. Again, because those fires may be happening in remote areas, not necessarily in areas that are built up or residential, and therefore you don't have the infrastructure in place to get water. Another critical challenge is about our assets. When we have those fires, what tend to happen is all of our units are out at the same time, and therefore we get additional calls that we can't respond to, or we respond to based on the severity or the risk that is involved. So it really takes us to the limit, and in many instances our resources actually is exhausted whenever it's the bushfire season.
On to health matters, members of the Dominica Nurses Association have ended a week of protest action on Friday outside the Prevo Cinemall in Roseau. Julian Morris has that story.
During the week, nurses protested outside the hospital, the Ministry of Health and the Roseau Credit Union, trying to draw attention to their concerns which cover salaries, working conditions and security concerns, among other matters.
Dominicans need quality care.
Give us the resources.
State-of-the-art hospital.
With the resources.
State-of-the-art hospital.
With the resources.
State-of-the-art hospital.
With the resources.
The nurses have refuted claims that their protest is politically motivated.
It's not about politics.
It's about healthcare.
It's not about politics.
It's about healthcare.
Invest in us.
We have saved lives.
Invest in us.
We have saved lives.
Invest in us.
We have saved lives.
We want to stay at home and work.
To make Dominica strong.
We want to stay at home and work.
To make Dominica
We
strong.
want to stay at home and work.
To make Dominica strong.
Upgrade our service
We
scale.
want to stay at home and work.
Nurses say they have a number of issues which they have tried to address through letters and the union, the PSU, but these concerns have become even more pressing in recent times and they are operating under an increased level of distress and anxiety.
In Marigot, the health center is closed for a week now because of mold infection. The mold infection you don't just come to work one day and you fall sick from mold infection. It takes a while to take a toll on you, and the nurses have been complaining about this mold issue in their health center, and right now 3 of them are on sick leave and the health center is closed. In Scott said, a nurse was on sick leave for mold infection recently. And guess what? This nurse is now providing primary health care from her motor car. The Maho Health Center is still under tarpaulin, and the district nurse there is providing health care from her motor car. The psychiatric unit is being refurbished. The structure was demolished with nurses at work and with patients there, and they're exposed to dust. Of course, they have moved them away from the direct area where the reconstruction is taking place, but the dust is reaching them, and they have to be wearing masks. They're coughing at work, and the environment is just sick. If it rains, they have to go on the outside. During the night, if they are not to walk in the area that is being reconstructed, then they have to walk outside of the building to go downstairs. Downstairs where the female patients are, it's very crowded, and it is not good when we're talking about hygiene and health care.
She says there are also challenges in the out districts.
The Vickers Health Center still has some boards and over some of its doors and windows. In Casabros, a year ago, the nurses complained about space for them when they have to remain on call. They're not giving them a proper house. The center is leaking from the skylight. Can you imagine water on tiles? Water on tiles. The minister went there. He saw it. A year, several months later, nothing. Penville doesn't have a health center. Coolibistry, the nurses are operating from the Church Presbytery in Coolibistry. The Newtown Health Center, it's about 3 years. The Newtown Health Center is being operated in a container at the Roseau Health Center.
As far as addressing their concerns, the Nurses Association is not a bargaining unit and must therefore leave the negotiations to the Public Service Union and government. The DNA is due to meet with its union next week.
And that's a word to the people who are politicizing this thing. They're accusing me of being political. As a very young nurse, for 31 years I'm a nurse. I've always been a voice for my nurses, whether I'm president of the association or not. Well, we are having a meeting with, he has attempted to push our cause, but we wanted to push it further, and that's why we're having a meeting with him on Tuesday. Because he has written to the minister, he has had meeting with the minister, he and the president. We've had PSU and DNA, we've partnered and we've met the minister. The minister promised us a follow-up meeting. When the day for the meeting came, there was no minister. You understand? So the PSU is doing its part, but DNA has a voice of its own. With anybody who joins us, we are stronger. Certainly, but we have a voice of its own. We don't want that voice to go dead, because that voice was there before I was born. The DNA voice was there before I was born, before I became a nurse. We don't want that voice to die.
You are watching the Channel 5 News. Stay tuned for more after the break.
Imagine you have Hollywood at your command. Introducing Flow Evil.
Red cheese, gold rings, all black, everything creeping through the night.
Anywhere you are,
Big girls don't scream hard like Halloween, make me feel alive.
there's a world of entertainment here, and you run the show. Flow Evil.
L'Anissim tout partout. Attention si vous êtes homme et bien femme. Visitez place santé pour examiner corps. Ça c'est un nid pour yo ouais si l'ani pièce moun au lion qui ni maladie TB et bien maladie sexuelle. En compagnie moun qui ni maladie HIV pe ni TB aussi. Savent qui l'ani guérison pour TB. Ou ça vivre en bonne santé même si ou ni maladie HIV. Parlez by docteur. Prends responsabilité ou. Aidez du bout de sime maladie TB et HIV. Ou agir tout le monde pour examiner corps yo.
Welcome back. Prime Minister Skerrit told a high-level UN meeting on climate and sustainable development on Thursday that more needed to be done to prepare small island developing states for the impact of natural disasters. Mr. Skerrit believes the issue of climate change must be approached forcefully and with military precision.
I reiterate my view, stated after Maria, that the global population must see itself in a war against climate change. As with any other war, we must take the threat seriously and mount a commensurate response. We must employ defensive positions with appropriate policies and programs. We must deploy human, technical, and financial resources to the front lines. We must build capacity and resilience. We must equip our troops, who are our populations, to adapt and mitigate. Most of all, we must recognize that the brotherhood of multilateralism requires us to fight as a unified army. The global community and the multilateral system which serves it must leave no one behind, as the casualties of the climate war are particularly the vulnerable populations of the small island developing states. Madam President, if we can make progress along such lines during this very important session, then finally we would have moved the issue from pending to action.
Liat announced the cancellation of several flights due to what it termed operational reasons on Thursday. The Barbados Nation reports the financially strapped airline did not elaborate on the operational reasons. The airline had previously warned several regional destinations that they had until 15th March to respond to its minimal revenue guarantee MRG proposals. Under an MRG model, it is likely that a few flights may be cut if the government is not prepared to fund them with a guarantee. St. Vincent and the Grenadines Prime Minister, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, indicated that theoretically, several countries have no quarrel with the MRG. The airline said that it was cancelling flights LI-374 from Barbados to St. Lucia, LI-375 from St. Lucia to Barbados, LI-337 from Barbados to Grenada, LI-338 from Grenada to Barbados, LI-769 from Barbados to St. Vincent, and LI-770 from St. Vincent to Barbados. And the United States has accused Russia of reckless escalation of the situation in Venezuela. This after Russia deployed military planes and personnel to Venezuela after the U.S. hit the country with crippling sanctions. The Russian planes and military personnel arrived outside the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, 2 months after the Trump administration disavowed President Nicolas Maduro. Washington has recognized opposition leader Juan Guaido as the country's legitimate president and demands that Maduro leave power. Russia has described the move as a U.S.-backed coup against the Venezuela government. The vice president of Venezuela's Socialist Party, Diosdado Cabello, confirmed 2 planes had flown to the country from Russia, but he did not give a reason or say they carried troops. Cabello said on state television, open quote, the planes from Russia landed in Venezuela because they were authorized by the only government that there is in Venezuela, and it's called the government of Nicolas Maduro, close quote. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in a phone call on Monday that Washington would, open quote, not stand idly by, close quote, as Russia backed Maduro. Pompeo did not say what the United States would do in response to Russian troops.
Imagine you have Hollywood at your command. Introducing Flow Evil.
Red cheese, gold rings, all black, everything creeping through the night.
Anywhere you are.
Big girls don't scream hard like Halloween, make me feel alive.
There's a world of entertainment here, and you run the show. Flow Evil.
Here are some tips to reduce mosquito presence in and around your home. Keep water storage containers properly covered. Remove containers that can collect water from your surroundings. Keep garbage bins tightly covered. Pick up your litter and remove all tires from your yard. Keep gutters free of leaves and twigs to prevent stagnant water. Prevent Zika, dengue, and chikungunya. Fight the bite. This is a public service announcement from the Dominica Red Cross.
This message is supported by Flow.
To end the news, the headlines again. 82 million from the World Bank for development of Dominica's agriculture. Roseau market vendors look forward to off-season cruise calls to boost their earnings this year. And nurses end a week of protest action on Friday ahead of their union meeting next week. Feel free to contact us at news@marpin2k4.com. You can also access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the entire production team, I am Andrea Louis, and to all of our viewers around the world, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.